Prologue. The world needs more heroes. The rain had stopped an hour before they arrived, leaving the streets of Tokyo glistening like polished obsidian beneath the afternoon sun. 12-year-old Shinra Kusakabe held his little brother's hand tightly as they walked up the stone steps toward the grand entrance of the Overwatch Museum, their mother trailing just behind with that warm, patient smile she always wore when watching her boys together. "Slow down, Shinra," she called gently, her voice lilting with amusement. "The museum isn't going anywhere." But Shinra couldn't slow down. Not today. Today was special. Today, 6-year-old Sho was finally old enough to appreciate what Shinra had been obsessed with for the past 3 years, the heroes who had saved the world during the Omnic Crisis. The real heroes. Not the ones from manga or video games, but flesh and blood people who had stood between humanity and annihilation. "Big brother," Sho said, his tiny voice struggling to keep up with his excitement as much as his legs struggled to keep pace on the steps. "Will we see Strike Commander Morrison's gun? The real one?" Shinra grinned down at him, that wide, toothy grin that his classmates said made him look a little manic, but that his mother insisted was endearing. "Better than that, Sho. We'll see everything. Reinhardt's hammer, Mercy's staff, maybe even Tracer's chronal accelerator." Sho's dark eyes went wide with wonder, and Shinra felt a surge of pride. Being a big brother meant sharing the things you loved, teaching the little guy about what mattered in the world. And nothing mattered more to Shinra than heroes. The museum's entrance hall stole the breath from both their lungs. Vaulted ceilings stretched 3 stories high, supported by pillars of white stone that seemed to glow in the natural light filtering through massive skylights above. Holographic displays floated throughout the space like luminous jellyfish, each one cycling through images of Overwatch's greatest moments: the liberation of Berlin, the defense of Sydney, the final push that had ended the Omnic Crisis and brought peace to a shattered world. In the center of it all stood a monument that drew visitors like a lodestone, a bronze statue 20 feet tall depicting the original strike team: Morrison, Reyes, Amari, Wilhelm, Lindholm, and Ziegler, standing back to back, weapons ready, faces turned toward different horizons, as if watching over the entire world at once. "Wow," Sho whispered, and the single syllable carried more reverence than any prayer. Shinra squeezed his hand. "I know, right?" Their mother purchased the tickets while the boys stood transfixed by the statue, reading and rereading the inscription carved into its base: "United we stand, together we prevail." The words sent electricity down Shinra's spine. There was something about them, something that made his heart beat faster, made him want to stand straighter, be better. "Come on," he said, tugging Sho toward the first exhibition hall. "The Omnic Crisis section first. You need to understand where it all started." The next 2 hours passed in a blur of wonder. They walked through recreated battlefields where holographic bastion units marched in perfect formation, their simulated gunfire crackling through hidden speakers. Sho clutched Shinra's arm during that part, but he didn't look away. They stood in the bombed-out shell of a recreated King's Row Street, learning about the Omnic occupation of London and the daring rescue mission led by Morrison and Reyes. They watched documentary footage of Anna Amari taking impossible shots, of Reinhard Wilhelm charging through enemy lines with his barrier shield blazing, of Angela Ziegler healing wounds that should have been fatal. "She's so cool," Sho breathed, watching Mercy's wings extend in slow motion on a massive screen. "Like an angel." "The best medic in the world," Shinra agreed. "They say she brought people back from the edge of death, over and over again, never gave up on a single person." They moved through halls dedicated to each founding member, absorbing the stories of sacrifice and courage. But it was the Hall of Valor that truly captured Shinra's imagination, a long corridor lined with the actual equipment used by Overwatch agents during the crisis. Behind reinforced glass, bathed in carefully controlled lighting, sat the artifacts of legends. Reinhardt's rocket hammer, Earthshaker, stood propped against a replica of his barrier projector. The weapon was massive, easily 7 feet long, its head scarred and dented from countless impacts. A placard explained that this was the third hammer Reinhardt had wielded. The first two had been destroyed in combat. He broke two of them? Sho asked, awed. Fighting Titans and OR-14 units, Shinra said, having memorized every detail from his previous visits. Sometimes he'd use the broken pieces as clubs. He never stopped fighting. They found Torbjorn's original forge hammer, still darkened with soot. Mercy's first caduceus staff prototype. Less elegant than the modern version, but no less revolutionary. Anna Amari's Kinemura rifle, the very weapon she'd used to turn the tide at the Battle of Cairo. And then, at the far end of the hall, illuminated like a holy relic, stood the Doom Fist gauntlet. It sat on a raised platform, surrounded by a cylindrical shield of reinforced glass, the metal and machinery of its construction seeming almost alive in the directed lighting. The gauntlet was enormous, built for a man of incredible size. Its knuckles reinforced with some dark alloy that still bore scratches and blast marks from its final battle against Overwatch. Pistons and hydraulic systems ran along the forearm like mechanical musculature, and at the elbow joint, glowing conduits suggested the immense power the weapon could generate. "The Scourge of Numbani," their mother read from the nearby placard, having caught up with them at last. She wrapped an arm around each son's shoulders. Akande Ogundimu, the second man to take the name Doomfist, defeated by Winston and Strike Commander Morrison in a battle that nearly destroyed Numbani's Heritage Museum. He believed humanity only grew strong through conflict. He was wrong, Shinra said firmly. How do you know? Sho asked, looking up at him with that absolute trust only a little brother could have. Shinra met his eyes. Because Overwatch proved something better, that people are strongest when they protect each other, when they stand together. Doomfist fought alone, for his own beliefs. Overwatch fought for everyone. Their mother's eyes softened, and she pulled them both a little closer. Your father would have loved hearing you say that, she whispered. The moment hung in the air, tender and fragile. Their father had died in the Omnic crisis before Sho was even born, not as a soldier, but as a firefighter, pulling people from a collapsed building during a Bastion unit bombardment. The ache of his absence was a familiar companion, but here, surrounded by the legacy of heroes, it felt less like grief and more like inheritance. Mom, Sho said quietly, do you think heroes are real? I mean, still real? Everyone says Overwatch is gone now. It was true. 6 years ago, Overwatch had been disbanded after the Petrus Act, following a catastrophic explosion at their Swiss headquarters that killed Strike Commander Morrison and the leadership. The organization had been accused of negligence, of overreach, of becoming the very thing it had fought against. Now its members were scattered, its facilities shuttered, its legacy contested. But standing here, in this Hall of Wonders, with the weight of history pressing down on them, Shinra couldn't believe heroism itself had died. Their mother knelt down, bringing herself to Sho's eye level. Heroes are always real, sweetheart. They're not the uniforms or the weapons. They're the choices people make when everything is on the line. The choice to stand up instead of run away, to protect instead of hide. Overwatch may be gone, but the need for heroes never goes away. Then we'll just have to become heroes ourselves, Shinra declared with that manic grin. Right, Sho. We'll. The explosion shattered the moment like crystal. The blast came from somewhere near the entrance hall, a concussive boom that shook the entire building and sent ancient dust raining from the ceiling. The lights flickered. Somewhere, an alarm began to wail. And through the walls, muffled but unmistakable, came the sound of screaming. Their mother's expression transformed instantly from gentle to fierce. She grabbed both boys' hands and pulled them toward the emergency exit at the far end of the Hall of Valor. Move, now! But they'd only made it 3 steps when the reinforced doors at the hall's entrance exploded inward. Not with fire or force, with venom. Purple gas flooded through the opening, spreading across the floor like a living thing, and through it stepped figures that seemed pulled from nightmares. The first was a woman, impossibly tall and impossibly thin, her purple skin gleaming in the emergency lighting. She moved with liquid grace, a sniper rifle held casually in one hand, her golden eyes scanning the hall with predatory calculation. Behind her came something that might have been human once. Now it was wrapped in darkness, a billowing wraith of shadow and tatters. Dual shotguns held in gaunt hands, a skull-white mask where a face should have been. And floating beside them, holographic and smirking, was a woman with purple highlights in her hair, her fingers dancing through digital interfaces only she could see. "Widow, you're sure the gauntlet is worth this much noise?" the holographic woman asked, her voice carrying a playful lilt. "Overwatch security protocols are already triggering. We've got maybe 4 minutes." The tall woman, Widowmaker, Shinra's mind supplied with cold horror, didn't pause in her approach toward the Doomfist gauntlet's display. "The gauntlet is priceless, Sombra, and as you said, we have 4 minutes." "More than enough." The wraith figure spoke in a voice like gravel and smoke. "Witnesses? Do what you do best, Reaper." The wraith raised his shotguns toward the handful of visitors who'd been frozen in terror throughout the hall, toward Shinra's mother, toward Sho. Time crystallized into perfect, terrible clarity. Shinra saw his mother's hand reaching to push them behind her, saw Sho's small face crumpling into fear, saw the wraith's finger beginning to tighten on the trigger, and felt something ignite in his chest. Not flames, not yet, but something just as hot, just as fierce. The need to move. His body reacted before his mind caught up. One moment he was standing beside his family. The next he had thrown himself forward, knees bending, stance widening, rushing toward the attackers with his arms spread wide, as if he could shield everyone behind him through sheer willpower. "Run!" he screamed, his 12-year-old voice cracking with the effort. "Mom, take Sho and run!" The wraith, Reaper, turned his skull mask toward Shinra with what might have been surprise. Then he adjusted his aim. Shinra threw himself into a slide across the polished floor, his momentum carrying him under the blast of darkness and pellets that tore through the space where his chest had been a heartbeat before. The world became motion and instinct. He rolled, came up running, changed direction as another blast cratered the wall beside his head. He wasn't fast enough, wasn't strong enough, wasn't anything but a 12-year-old kid who'd made a stupid, impulsive decision. But he'd bought time. Behind him, he heard his mother herding other visitors toward the emergency exit, heard Sho calling his name in terror. That was good. That was right. Heroes bought time for others to escape. Heroes put themselves between the innocent and the monsters, even if they were just kids who didn't know what they were doing. Reaper's shotgun clicked empty. He tossed it aside with casual disdain. It dissolved into smoke before hitting the ground, and materialized another from the shadows wreathing his form. "Brave," he rasped, "and stupid." "Let the boy go, Gabe," came a voice that surprised everyone. The holographic woman, Sombra, flickered, her playful expression darkening. "We don't kill kids. That's not the contract." "The contract says to eliminate witnesses and secure the payload," Widowmaker called from across the hall. She'd reached the gauntlet's display and was planting some kind of device on the reinforced glass. "What Gabriel does to accomplish that is his concern." "Actually, no es así, Araña," Sombra shot back, her voice hardening. "I'm pulling us out if you execute a child. Some lines even Talon doesn't cross." The tension ratcheted up another impossible notch. Reaper stood with his weapon trained on Shinra, who had backed up against the nearest display case, the one holding Reinhardt's hammer. Widowmaker continued working on the gauntlet's protective cylinder, her movements precise and unhurried, and Sombra's hologram flickered between the two, her expression genuinely angry. Shinra's heart hammered against his ribs like it was trying to escape. His hands, pressed against the display case behind him, were slick with sweat. But he didn't look away from Reaper's mask. Couldn't look away. If he did, if he showed weakness, the wraith would pull the trigger. Heroes didn't blink first, even 12-year-old heroes who were absolutely terrified. 10 seconds, Widowmaker announced. The device on the glass began glowing brighter. Behind Reaper, movement caught Shinra's eye. His mother hadn't run. She'd gotten the other visitors out, gotten Sho out, but now she was creeping back into the hall, a fire extinguisher held like a club, coming back for him. No, Shinra thought desperately. No, 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 Mom, please. 5 seconds. His mother raised the extinguisher. Reaper's mask turned slightly, catching the motion in his peripheral vision. Time stretched like taffy, and Shinra's hand, pressed against the display case, felt something shift. The glass behind him wasn't locked. Or rather, it had been locked, but his weight against it had triggered some kind of internal mechanism, some failsafe designed for emergency evacuation of the artifacts. It swung open behind him, and Shinra tumbled backward into the display, his hand closing reflexively on the first thing he touched to catch himself. The haft of Earthshaker, Reinhardt's rocket hammer. It was impossibly heavy. His 12-year-old muscles screamed in protest as he tried to lift it. But physics and desperation are wonderful motivators. He didn't need to lift it so much as fall with it, letting gravity and momentum do the work his strength couldn't. The hammer's head came down in a wild, uncontrolled arc. It missed Reaper by 3 feet. It struck the floor with the force of a meteor. The impact was beyond anything Shinra could have anticipated. The hammer had been designed for a man in powered armor, designed to channel kinetic energy through its rocket systems into devastating strikes. Even without those systems active, even wielded by a terrified child, the sheer mass of it hitting marble floor created a shockwave that cracked stone and sent everyone in the hall staggering, including Reaper, including his mother. The fire extinguisher flew from her hands. She hit the ground hard. And Reaper, recovering faster than any human should, turned his shotgun toward her prone form with mechanical inevitability. Mom! Shinra couldn't lift the hammer again, couldn't even hold it. It had already fallen from his grip. But he could move. He lunged from the display case in a desperate sprint, throwing himself between Reaper and his mother without any plan, without any hope, with nothing but the bone-deep certainty that this was what you did. This was what heroes did. The shotgun roared. Shinra felt the impact like a truck hitting his chest, felt himself lifted and thrown backward, felt pain explode through his entire body as he crashed into another display case hard enough to shatter glass and crack wood. But the pain was distant, secondary, because as he fell, as the world spun and his vision blurred, he saw his mother scrambling to her feet, saw her running for the exit, saw her escape. Worth it, he thought as the darkness closed in. Worth! Get down! The voice was British, feminine, and crackling with urgency. Reality blinked. One moment, Reaper was raising his weapon for a final shot at the downed child. The next, there was a blur of blue light, a sound like tearing fabric, and a figure in an orange jacket and white pants materialized between them with twin pulse pistols raised. Tracer. Lena Oxton. The cavalry. The fastest woman alive and the face of Overwatch's golden age. She'd been gone since the organization's disbandment. A ghost, a memory, a hero from a better time. But she was here. Cheers, love, Tracer said, her voice carrying that trademark cheerful defiance, even as she faced down 3 of Talon's deadliest operatives. Party's over, her pistols sang. Reaper dissolved into smoke, reappearing 10 feet away. Sombra's hologram flickered and vanished. And Widowmaker, having successfully breached the gauntlet's display, grabbed the massive weapon with inhuman strength and moved with liquid speed toward the hole her venom mine had blown in the outer wall. We have the payload, Widowmaker's voice came through comms. Withdraw. The kid, Sombra's voice protested. Withdraw. Tracer blinked forward in a burst of blue light, trying to cut off Widowmaker's escape. But Reaper materialized between them in a swirl of shadows, his shotguns roaring. The Overwatch agent ducked, rolled, blinked backward, and came up firing, but by then Widowmaker had reached the wall. She turned back once, those golden eyes finding Shinra where he lay bleeding and broken among the shattered glass of the display. Au revoir, petit héros, she said softly. Then she was gone, leaping through the hole with impossible grace, the Doomfist gauntlet secured in her arms. Reaper followed in a cloud of shadow. Sombra's hologram flickered back into existence for just a moment, long enough for Tracer to see her looking at Shinra with something that might have been regret. Then she too vanished. The Hall of Valor fell silent, except for the wailing alarms and the sound of Shinra's ragged breathing. Tracer was at his side in an instant, her pistols holstered, her hands moving with practiced efficiency over his injuries. "Easy, love, easy. Don't try to move. You took some pellets, but they missed anything vital. You're going to be okay." Shinra tried to speak, but blood filled his mouth. Tried to ask about his mother, about Sho, about whether he'd done the right thing, whether he'd been enough. "Your mom and brother are safe," Tracer said, somehow reading his mind. Her brown eyes warm despite the urgency of the moment. "They're with museum security. You saved them, sweetheart. You are so, so brave." Brave. The word echoed in Shinra's fading consciousness. He'd been brave. He'd been a hero, even if just for a moment. Even if he was just a stupid kid who got shot trying to play at something he didn't understand. Tracer's chronal accelerator hummed as she adjusted something on her harness. "Stay with me now. Ambulance is coming. You're going to be fine. She paused, really looking at him for the first time, taking in his manic grin even through the pain, the way he'd thrown himself into danger without hesitation, the absolute lack of fear in his eyes even now. "What's your name, love?" "Shinra," he managed through the blood. "Kusakabe." "Well, Shinra Kusakabe," Tracer said, and her smile was sad and proud and ancient all at once. "You've got the heart of a proper hero. The world needs more people like you, always needs more heroes." She glanced toward the shattered entrance where police sirens were growing louder. "Remember that, yeah? When you're older, when you're ready, the world needs more heroes." "Oh, Overwatch," Shinra whispered. "Is gone," Tracer said gently. "But what it stood for, that never dies. Long as there are people willing to stand up, to put themselves on the line." She squeezed his shoulder carefully, avoiding his injuries. "People like you." The darkness was closing in properly now, dragging Shinra down into unconsciousness despite his best efforts to resist. But Tracer's words followed him into the black, burning themselves into his soul like a brand. The world needs more heroes. The world needs you. The last thing Shinra saw before the darkness took him was Tracer standing up, her pistols drawn again, her chronal accelerator glowing as she blinked toward the sound of more fighting in the entrance hall. Even disbanded, even hunted, even erased from history, she was still fighting, still protecting, still a hero. And in that moment, bleeding on the floor of the Overwatch Museum, 12-year-old Shinra Kusakabe made a promise to himself, a promise that would define the next 12 years of his life. "I'll become a hero too. I'll stand up when others fall. I'll protect people with a smile, just like she does, no matter what it takes, no matter what I have to sacrifice. I'll be the hero this world needs." The darkness finally claimed him, but the fire in his heart, the spark that Tracer had ignited with her words and her example, would never go out. In another part of the museum, in the secured medical bay, 6-year-old Sho Kusakabe clung to his mother and watched the news footage playing on the emergency broadcast. Watched Talon operatives escaping with the Doomfist gauntlet. Watched his big brother being loaded into an ambulance, unconscious and bleeding. Watched the woman in the orange jacket, Tracer, the commentators called her, the fugitive former Overwatch agent, fighting a rearguard action against Talon to buy time for the evacuation. "Big brother was so cool," Sho whispered through his tears, "so brave." Their mother held him tighter, her own tears falling silently. "Yes," she agreed, "yes, he was." Neither of them could know that in just 2 years their world would end in fire and omnic thunder, that the family broken today would be shattered completely, that the brothers holding hands on museum steps would be torn apart by forces beyond their control. Neither of them could know that the next time Shinra and Sho met, they would be enemies. But in this moment, in the aftermath of chaos, with sirens wailing and heroes fighting and the world watching, 6-year-old Sho made his own silent promise. "I want to be like my big brother. I want to be a hero too." The tragedy of parallel paths is that you can run toward the same goal from opposite directions and never realize you're about to collide until it's far too late. The story of Shinra Kusakabe, of the fire soldier, of the devil's footprints, of the man who would bridge two worlds and burn away the lies of villains, began here, in a museum dedicated to dead heroes. In the moment a child decided that death didn't matter, that what mattered was the choice to stand. The world needs more heroes. 12 years later, the world would get one, and he would smile while it burned.